Welcome to the Future is Borderless podcast with David Nilsson. We feature top entrepreneurs and thought leaders from around the world, those who bring a global mindset and a unique perspective to their life and business. Now, let's get started with the show.
David Nilsson here. I'm the host of this show. Here we connect with business leaders from around the world who have a borderless mindset. They can share ideas, innovations, best practices that can be applied to both life and business, ultimately helping us to lead and grow in a rapidly changing world. Now, this episode is brought to you by DOXA Talent. DOXA Talent helps businesses source full-time, highly skilled workers from all over the world. And as a result, these companies can scale faster, increase their margin, and improve culture. To learn more about DOXA and how you can leverage borderless talent, go to doxatalent.com. All right, for today's guest, Lex Cisney is a business scaling expert and a wizard in organizational structure and design. He works with CEOs and leadership teams of expansion stage companies who are committed to growing their business without compromising their values. Lex, after experiencing some struggles founding and then leading fast-growing companies, he discovered that organizational success can be distilled down to some very simple yet powerful principles that also happen to be the laws of physics. And these laws were true 10,000 years ago and will be just as true 10,000 years from today. Lex has authored four books designed to scale, how to structure your business for exponential growth, organizational physics, the science of growing a business, how to think about hiring, play smarter to win with the talent game, and then Ready for Enlightenment, an insider's guide to the biggest trip of your life. He also creates some amazing content on organizationalphysics.com where he shares insights into scaling a business and building high-performing teams. Now, Lex has been featured as a keynote in a variety of high-profile events, including LinkedIn's Inner MBA program, YPO and EO events, and many, many others. And on a more personal note, I'll just tell you that Lex Cisney has been a huge influence on me as a business mentor and coach and now friend. And in fact, it would be hard for me to find anyone else who has had such a significant impact on me as a leader. So I'm thrilled to now share him with you. So Lex, it's great to have you on the call.
Thanks, David, and congrats on your new podcast. That's pretty cool. I'm excited to tune in, and I know we'll all learn a lot.
Yeah, I'm excited for it as well. I appreciate you being willing to take the jump with me here. So before we get into what you're doing today, I thought it'd be good to just start from the beginning. In your intro, I talk a little bit about, or I shared that, you had some challenges as a founder and entrepreneur. Maybe you could share just a little bit with the audience here about what your entrepreneur journey has looked like.
Yeah, I think the most important lessons for me is that I came from a school of like have big ambition, be really focused, go all in and work your ass off. Like that's the secret to success, And I think that's true. It will get you to a certain level of success and then it doesn't scale. And what happened with me is I was just, also market timing is everything. I kind of got lucky. I had a business in the right market environment and it just got yanked forward by market demand,
Yep.
And as a young CEO, I'm doing my best to lead this company. And if I reflect back in that period, I was taking a very piecemeal approach. I'd read a book, I'd get excited about something about culture, or I'd read another book or about incentive plans. And one board member would tell me this and I'd do that. And another one would tell me that. You just feel like the noise in my head, And what's interesting is if you find yourself in a hyper growth situation is you experience quickly the limits of popular wisdom. And because much of it is conflicting, you got to know, does this apply to my situation now? Did it apply to my situation 6 months ago and 6 months in the future? Are you with me? If you're in a normal growth environment, you can get away with so much. Like you can be making a mistake gradually and there's no feedback mechanism. But a little bit of a mistake in a hyper growth situation, you're going to get instant feedback that this isn't working. And it's even more complicated because every action has an equal and opposite reaction, right? So I may have done something in one area of the business and I'm having a fallout in another, and I'm not even aware of the correlation there or the causation, okay? So it was in that setting that I realized I had to come up with new approaches. And that kind of began a quest for, I didn't have this language at the time, but I was looking for cross-border or cross-discipline mental models, like principles that exist in this domain, they exist in that domain. And I just had a very strong intuition. If I could hone in on those, it's like some universal first principles, I could like build on those, I could build up from there. But if I lacked those, I would just be chaos and noise in my head and in my life and in my work. And so that's what happened. I went on this quest. Entrepreneurs are kind of all or nothing. I legitimately like shifted gears in my life from trying to be an entrepreneur CEO to questing for like insights and frameworks and then coaching. And I learned a lot from that transition, but it went a lot longer than I thought it would. And anyway, the end result was organizational physics, which is my coaching practice. And I have you mentioned the book, couple books, three or four books from there. And the idea is, hey, when you're in a fast growing company and you get to this transition zone, you've tried a lot of things. Your intuition's telling you, yeah, something's off here. I need to change things to scale, but I don't want to lose my entrepreneurial edge, that our core values in doing it. I step into that transition zone and kind of help teach CEOs who were in my position a decade ago how to navigate their way quickly through that and get back on the fun curve, growth curve, but without becoming an old stodgy, big bureaucratic company that you're trying to disrupt.
Yeah. It's funny. A lot of what you just said there resonates for me, right? It's that you start reading these books and you get all these random ideas. In fact, my teams in the past used to get really nervous when I would go to a conference because they knew I would come back with all these different ideas that they now have to implement. And we probably lose momentum on 3 to 6 months down the road as a shiny new toy, right? But tell me, what are some of the symptoms? You talked about intuition. I think a lot of leaders, at least those that I know, do rely a lot on their intuition. But what are some of the symptoms? Like if you're in a hyper scaling business, but you're starting to recognize, hey, things aren't working out. What are some of the things that people might see, not just feel?
Okay, so some of the things they might see and experience is they feel like a bottleneck themselves. Like the CEO or founder feels like despite their best efforts at delegating, they're just still the go-to, can't escape. And those times that they've tried to delegate, it's been a disaster, right? So twice bitten, once shy. They'll believe they have some really strong leaders of, departments or teams, but the team's not working well as a team. So they might speak like, hey, we have really strong verticals, but we're weak horizontally. The company might be trying to pursue too many different initiatives all at once. And that's important because, you want to match your business rhythm to the life cycle stage of the company, the products and its markets. And so a lot of entrepreneurs are so visionary and gung-ho that they just get out in front of their own skis, and they've launched 3 different business units. So they didn't have the foundation really to scale one. They just didn't realize it until they tried to launch 2 and 3, and they realized the limitations on their core business. So that's another symptom. And another symptom is often, like if you're like me, I tried to do what I was supposed to do. I tried to bring in a senior management team back then. I'm Mr. Outside. I'm going to have an inside person to run all this crap for me so I can do my genius out here, disaster, right? Like, so you got to go through. So you got to kind of go through and step on the upturn rake and get smashed a few times in the nose to go, oh, all this popular advice isn't always so astute,
Yep.
Those are some symptoms.
I remember, so it's funny. I remember, I can't remember the exact year. I think 2012 is when I first met you around a conference in Seattle. And I was talking to you about something similar, about how I was thinking, maybe I could put myself in my genius, which wouldn't necessarily be as the operator. And I think what I had outlined to you, you said, that sounds nice if you want to be the Queen of England. I think those were your exact quotes. Yeah. Didn't really work. By the way, when you said strong vertically, but weak horizontally, I've actually seen, I think, if I'm understanding this correctly, seen this in many businesses where an entrepreneur, maybe myself, gets excited about something. We invest in this new opportunity.
Yeah.
And we hire leadership to help lead it, but we don't actually resource to the shared services that have to support that. And you end up in this place where you've got these, you've got early momentum, and then behind the scenes, things are starting to really fray. Is that what you're talking about?
That wasn't what I was talking about, but that's another good symptom is that we've launched this new initiative, and it's kind of a stillbirth. We were excited about it, but it's not breaking through to real market penetration. So that's certainly a symptom. I was talking about something more general where it's just weak cross-functional coordination happening. And often that's, people will attribute that to a breakdown in people and culture. But if you look beneath the surface, you'll see there's actually a structural breakdown and often a process breakdown that's harming cross-functional coordination.
Got it. One of the concepts when I first read organizational physics. Now, for those that are on this call, if you've not read organizational physics, I will tell you, I probably recommended this to 50 different entrepreneurs. I always say it's one of my top 3 favorite business books. And it's true. What Lex's biography or resume, I should say, says, these principles were true 10,000 years ago, they'll be true later. One of the concepts that for me was such a game changer was the concept of entropy. I wasn't even familiar with the topic when we first met. The idea that, we have a finite amount of resources, and entropy steals those resources first. And so a lot of us go chasing these shiny new toys, but we have holes in the boat that are leaking, causing stress in the system, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Will you talk a little bit about what entropy is and sort of how you help teams assess where that might be?
Yeah. So entropy is a loaded term, like a lot of things in life and business. So but I want to come back to intuition and, your gut feel, because I think it's so important to recognize that. Like, if you have a good mental model to frame up on a situation, like based on first principles, then you should trust your intuition and your gut wholeheartedly. You with me? But if you lack that mental model to make sense of things, you lack those first principles, then your intuition, your gut can really send you astray. Okay. So I'm making a big assumption that you've got a good first principle mental model to apply to your work or life or any situation. And now I'm saying you can trust your gut. And so going with that, let's just say, okay, you can sense if things are working well or not based upon what feels like an energy gain. That's a symptom of things working well. It's a symptom of being in integration with the environment. Okay. But if you're sensing there's energy drains happening, okay, that's a symptom of entropy. That's a symptom of failure or energy loss occurring. And like, if your life or your business was a boat, if strategy would be, I want to sail to Tahiti. Okay, that's strategy, right? I got to get a good crew together. We got to have a esprit de corps. That's like culture and people. Okay. But the boat's got to have a good design, that's structure, and the whole team's got to come together and sail well. That's process. But if there's a freaking hole in the boat, doesn't matter all those things, right? You're gonna stall, you're gonna sink. That's entropy. Entropy is akin to having the hole in the boat. And the reason why I'm coming back to intuition here is that all of us intuit that, Yep. But if you're like me, you were conditioned to ignore it, like just fight through, ignore the problems, focus on what's working well, don't go there, But if you go back to the first and second law of thermodynamics, you're going to realize, no, I should pay attention to the hole in the boat. That's a symptom of entropy. That's going to kill the system unless I plug the hole. You know what I mean? People don't like the term entropy, fine, but just think shit's falling apart. There's a hole in the boat.
That's the technical
loss. If you're a good captain, look under the water line periodically and make sure that there aren't any holes stealing from your top line performance. And that's the big epiphany in organizational physics, is because we have finite energy and time. If you want to sail far and fast, don't let entropy eat away from the inside out. You got to put some time and resources into solving it. And what I do in my work is fundamentally help companies align on the right strategy, keep their same culture, but then work as a team to reorganize, reduce entropy or plug the hole so that you can sail further and faster and have a lot more fun. But if you ignore the holes in the boat, you heard me, you know what happens. So that's the idea.
Yeah, I think that was the part that stood out to me, though, because every time I read a book, it's always about opportunity, right? Like, what's the next thing we're going to do? What's the next thing we're going to take on? What's the next way we're going to grow? And I thought it was just such a unique perspective to think about, like, what is stealing from your ability to take on that next thing, and make sure you do that first.
Yeah.
I loved that.
Alluding to what you were saying earlier, and if we do take on this opportunity, what are the downstream implications that we need to be preparing for now so we don't increase, we don't put a hole in our boat, right? By virtue of this, crashing it into the rocks, I guess would be one metaphor to continue.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about your new book. So Design to Scale, again, for those that are here, if you haven't had a chance to read it, I highly, highly recommend it. One of the things I really enjoyed in there is you really focus on organizational structure. It's a big portion of the book, right? Given I help businesses all over the world find talent, I see that people are constantly struggling with how they're organized and who owns what. Yeah. Maybe we sort of addressed this a little bit earlier, but I'd love to just revisit it. If you're an entrepreneur in a growth stage business, yes, your intuition is telling you something is off, but what are some of those things that you might see with someone that's organized poorly?
Okay. So some of the things I might see if someone's organized poorly is that they're just failing to capture the opportunity. Okay. They think they know what they want to do and why they want to do it, but they're just not able to get after it and execute quickly on it as a team. That's the biggest indication that you might have a structural flaw. And, I mentioned entropy is a loaded term. Structure is even more loaded term out there. It's not the org chart. Okay. Org chart is what represents people and reporting lines. And, it's not the accountability chart either, right? You can have an accountability chart that is perfectly clear accountability is totally misaligned for the strategy, or that have conflicting accountabilities assigned to one role, right? So when you get to a certain size of business growth, you got to kind of step away from the status quo, look again at your business and say, okay, for this strategy, what are the functions we need to energize in order to execute on it now and over time? A function is sales, marketing, operations, finance, right? What are the functions we need to energize to drive the strategy? Notice I haven't talked about people. I'm not talking about the status quo. They're off the page. Yeah. And you want to design those under certain principles. They're kind of first principles. And so what you'll see like in a startup, everybody's just wearing a ton of hats, super fun for a while until you reach the law of diminishing returns. But somebody's wearing a bunch of hats and they're in charge of sales and marketing. Very common. Yep. That's actually a structural flaw. Those are two distinct functions. There's sales, which is short range, driving revenue. There could even be demand generation on that, which is driving qualified leads. Yeah. But then there's marketing, which is brand strategy, brand architecture, longer range development. Back to intuition, notice that short range pressure always overpowers long range development. That's why if you're working crazy hours, you're like, okay, I just got to get over this hump and then I can take 3 days off and like rest, renew, reflect, or I got to go away on vacation to really plan for my future, or I'm not as present with my family or my staff, right? The short range pressure is incessant. It's the tyranny of now. If you don't design against it, that short range pressure will overpower your long range development, including your brand strategy, brand architecture. Yeah.
Yep.
Another structural flaw will be companies, especially companies that overcorrect. They allow efficiency, which is doing things in a controllable way, a repeatable way. They allow efficiency to overpower and control effectiveness, which is breaking glass, trying stuff, being flexible, creative. Just tune in with me, back to intuition. You realize like to be effective, you got to break glass.
Yep.
You got to try stuff. You got to do the right thing against total changing conditions, fast. Boom,
Yep.
Efficiency though, lock it down. Yeah. It's very common to find structural flaws where people just co-join things, where if they're not careful, they have a heavy operational environment, Six Sigma, processes, controls, that's just stifling effectiveness. So you can't allow that if you want your business to grow. Another example would be companies can allow centralized control, which is necessary, right? To keep the company out of harm. They can allow it to be in control of exactly the wrong things. Like delighting customers, or trying new ad campaigns, or making the sale. You know what I mean? Just notice there's all these tensions, and that you get to a certain stage of business, you got to develop the skill to go, okay, I have these polarities or these tensions, like a sailboat, I got to pull the sheet in enough to catch the wind and steer in the right direction. But if I pull it too tight, I'm going to flip. If I let it go to the sheet too far, I'm going to fall out of the wind. I'm going to stall. You kind of start to have to think like that. Like, what do I need to dial in here? What do I need to pull back a little bit here? Those are all related to structure. If your structure is messed up, if we're misorganized, then you're going to hire people into the wrong role. You're either going to hire the wrong people, hey, or you're going to hire the right people and put them in the wrong roles, and they're going to fail that way. So none of these are problems for a small startup. Okay, these are all like nice to have problems after you have product market fit and you're being pulled forward by market demand. So that's why a lot of entrepreneurs still aren't fully in tune with them, because they just haven't got to that stage yet.
Yeah, I mean, do you think it's so that makes total sense? When do you reassess strategy though, or your structure, right? Because when you're first a young business and you're trying to figure out, do I have product market fit, and you're gaining momentum, you're just building your team. You said it earlier, you're chief cook and bottle washer, everyone's wearing other hats. But at what points do you need to go back and constantly sort of reassess, are we organized correctly?
Well, there's only 2 times you have to look at structure, and you shouldn't look at it at all really until you already have product market fit. Okay. You may be tempted to look at it earlier, but really it's like teaching your, 13-year-old calculus, like wait, manage the kid to the stage, parent the kid to the stage, manage the business to the stage. So get product market fit. That's all that matters to start with. Then as you have that, you got to build out the business, right? Now's the time to start looking at your structure. And what I always do is I first design around functions. Like the brain in my head that performs a function. My heart performs a function. My lungs perform a function. Same thing for business. And so you want to lay out now in language of organizational physics, we'd say we're in kind of the mid nail it to early scale it stage is when you want to start to look and design your structure for the next stage of growth. And the only hard part about that is the CEO is so close to the people. It's very hard to step away from the people and think functionally and structurally, what do we need to drive forward this strategy? So first, if there's to answer your question, when to look at structure, don't do it until you're in mid nail it to late scale it, or you have product market. That means you have product market fit, you're being pulled forward. Look at it anytime there's a material change in strategy. So that would mean most companies don't make a radical shift in strategy. It's more of an evolution. But let's say that I have my core business and it's doing well. It's a cash cow. Great. I'm going to launch my new business. What would happen if I took my same structure that I have for this cash cow business and I try to launch this new initiative in it? What's going to happen?
It's going to break down.
It's going to fail. It might get a little early traction and it's going to stifle. It's going to die, right? It's going to be a stillbirth. So that requires a change in structure that allows the team to drive the cash cow business and launch and grow and develop and pilot and nail scale this new initiative. That requires a change in structure. So life cycle change if change in life cycle stage requires a change in structure, change in strategy requires a change in structure after you have your core business up and running.
Yep. Now I don't want to overgeneralize the structures themselves, but in your book you go through a few different frameworks to think about it at least. I remember years ago, I went to a Singularity University event, right? And the instructor, who I thought was fantastic, was really preaching this idea of self-organizing teams as being like the future. And that's one of the concepts that you bring up, right? The top-down, the command of teams, and then the team of teams. You talk a little bit about the differences between those?
Okay, so there's a lot of noise out there about, it's anti-structure, the anti-structure crowd. Okay,
the Zappos model.
They're the anti-hierarchy crowd. And the irony is that if you look behind the scenes of a super egalitarian, self-managed organization that's working well, it actually is a hierarchical structure in place. It's just hidden. Okay. And the reason is that design controls behavior. So imagine like a novice entrepreneur who's read, Happiness, and they're fan of Steam, Gabe Newell, right? And they're just like, I'm gonna lead this company anyway. And they don't put any design elements into it. They just like, hey, everyone, show up and self-manage,
Yeah.
It'd probably work at 3 to 5 people.
Yes.
And then you just like, it's just going to be a mess. It's going to be like it's going to be worse than a mess, because the companies that I've worked with, that they have these very high aspirational cultures, and they fail to live up to it, it's even worse because like they're failing to hit this high target, right?
Yep.
So as a leader, you got to think, okay, the only reason to have a structure, by the way, this is also misunderstood, is to delegate. It's to push authority down so that self-organization can happen. But there's some things you have to have designed in place. It's not unlike being a game, imagine we're playing a board game. Let's say we're playing Settlers of Catan, okay? You could be really excellent player at Settlers of Catan. You're the best. Like you take pride at beating people and winning and being crafty. Awesome. You're a great game player. But someone had to design the game Settlers of Catan for others to play. On your CEO journey, you're going to have to make the leap from a great game player to a great game designer so that others can play the game you set up for them to play.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not laissez-faire, come what may, let's party down. It is a thoughtful, conscious design with thoughtful, conscious leadership behind it. And it just, what happens is in a self-managed organization is the leader steps more and more back behind the scenes. And so it can appear to even the employees like it just kind of things just kind of magically unfold here, but there's a design happening. Trust me, there's someone designing it and they're tuning it, very subtly, quietly behind the scenes, unless they need to step forward aggressively because there's a crisis, or a harm in values or something like that.
Yeah,
there's any sense?
Yeah, there's value to both, but I think that feels right to me, and I love the irony and the whole idea of the self-managed or self-organizing teams.
Yeah.
But you're right. Somebody's creating that structure and helping to sort of even drive the principles that people operate within those.
Yeah. Imagine a self-managed without hierarchical principles.
Yeah. How much does the structure, in your opinion, how much does the structure depend on people? And I'll give you an example, right? So, when you and I first started working together, I was founder and CEO of Guidant Financial. And I've since, left that. My partner is running that business, is doing very well, but I've started DOXA Talent. But as a founder, you just are who you are, right? And who you need around you sometimes is a little bit different based on your own skills and interests and what have you. So how much of the structure depends on the senior leader, in your opinion?
How many Phil Jackson NBA championships were a result of the triangle offense? He's got 11 rings, okay?
So I'm guessing it's 11 then.
I don't know. I think it might be 9. He had great talent, amazing talent. I don't know. I don't have the answer, but it's a hypothetical, of course. But I think Michael Jordan would have ended up with a few less championships, and Kobe and Shaq would have ended up with a few less championships without a good structure and process in place to execute within.
Yeah.
And there's a structure and process that allows some of those egos to meld together better as a team.
Mm-hmm.
So they're both are absolutely critical. The interesting thing to me about structure is if you can think through your structure independently of the people, then you can apply I need this kind of leader here in this role that will complement me, and they bring these other skills to the table, this other style. If you lack that, then you're just attracting people that don't maybe have a role to energize in the structure or the right role for them. And you'll end up wasting a lot of time, making a lot of costly mistakes. So, yeah.
So maybe the correlation is closer connected to the life cycle of the business. I mean, you talk about it being like, hey, you pilot it, then you nail it, then you scale it, then you missing the next one.
You want to avoid it, but a successful product or unit will get to milk it and then kill it, which means to shut it down, sell it off, but use those proceeds to fund new initiatives when you're in the milk it or kill it stage.
Yeah. But I guess the question is this, the structure that you use and the type of leader you need is probably really connected though to the stage of the business.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Yeah. I was thinking, I remember, you have an assessment that you've developed called PSIU, and the P stands for producer, S is stabilizer, I is innovator, and U is unifier. And the idea is you've got to have some of those forces on each team in order to sort of help it achieve its full potential. And I remember, I'm a high P, high I, high U, right? Producer, innovator, unifier, but you don't want me designing the processes, for lack of a better term, or managing the day-to-day, right? And so I remember at one point having the conversation, like the type of leader that we need at different stages of the business will shift. And as entrepreneurs, we have to be willing to accept that. So
I would say that founders are hard to replicate, that the founder in that high innovating force, that's a force that brings like strategy and vision into the future. We want to treat that as sacred because it's hard to replicate, and that it needs to be at the top of the organization for as long as is possible, but that how the structure evolves around that and who the complementary team is around that does evolve. Mm-hmm. And what I said isn't true for all founders, right? Some founders don't have that certain knack for this kind of business at this time in history, but those who do, don't underestimate how valuable that can be.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, I know we're getting close to the end here, but I want to just ask you one more question, and I'll preface it by saying, I believe today that we are living through a fundamental transformation in the way that we work and we live, and it requires, as I said earlier, this like borderless mindset, looking beyond the way that we think and we learn today, and allowing us to sort of change in this dynamically changing world. I guess my final question is, what advice do you have for business leaders who are struggling to adapt as fast as the world is shifting?
So a leader is going to struggle to adapt primarily for two reasons. One is their own intellectual processing power hasn't been able to keep up, okay? And the solution there is to become a systems thinker, right? Become a cross-border thinker, like look for those first principles that exist across domains. And if you can spot one of those, like you can double down, you can take that to the bank. That creates a lattice work for you to hang other ideas on. I think that most leaders, though, don't suffer from that. They actually suffer from, they're stuck in the inertia of the status quo. Their current business, the inertia is just like, it's hard to move, it's hard to turn the ship. And it's important to recognize that inertia in life and work is a real thing. Okay. And so we want to think about then, okay, if I know what the strategy needs to be in this changing reality, then I owe it to this organization. I must help this organization re-evolve, right? Evolve, change, re-energize for this new reality. No holds barred.
Yeah.
And a key element of that shift is going to show up in the structure, because the structure is supporting the status quo. So you got to break the structure that's supporting the status quo in order to get new behaviors. So that's probably where the friction's coming from.
Fantastic. Well, we've been listening to Lex Sisney, who's the author of Design to Scale, How to Structure Your Business for Exponential Growth. If you haven't read it, buy it. I promise it'll have a huge impact on you and your business. But Lex, if people want to learn more about you and your concepts, where can they go?
Organizationalphysics.com.
Awesome. Thanks, Lex. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, David. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Future is Borderless podcast with David Nilsson. Be sure to click subscribe to future episodes so you can hear from more top entrepreneurs and thought leaders. And we'll see you again next time.